If there's one thing everyone in the world could agree on, it would probably be that long road trips suck. You're forced to sit in a musty-ass vehicle for hours, right next to your whole family and all of their belongings. Never an ideal way to spend your Tuesday if I don't say so myself. So, to make a long road trip not the most unbearable thing possible, one has to entertain themselves. As a kid, I only had a few options. I could listen to whatever CD my parents were playing, or to the MP3s of the 27 songs I had downloaded from YouTube lyric videos with the worst sound quality possible. I could read a book, but I already read the best books in my reading level. I could play some Game Boy Advance, if I had remembered to charge it from the 5-hour Pokemon Emerald binge from the night before. Or finally, I could whip out the good old portable DVD player and watch The Incredibles, Cat in the Hat, or those same 8 episodes of What's New Scooby-Doo. Portable DVD players were first introduced to the market in 1998 by Panasonic. These handy machines became very common in the 2000s and are still even sold online and in some stores to this day. I grew up with this bad boy myself, the Cyberhome CH-LDV 700B. There wasn't a chance I was on vacation, and this machine and several of my favorite DVDs weren't with me. Most of these players weren't necessarily special, but they did all the basic functions needed to enjoy a movie or some episodes away from home. Now, if you were growing up around the early 2000s, it was still very likely that you had VHS tapes laying around. Either to record some episode of Lost you were gonna miss, or to rent whatever random kung fu movie from your preferred rental store. VHS as a format wasn't officially dead until the dawn of the 2010s, and it had me thinking. Did any company manufacture a portable VHS player? I know of a few companies back in the early 1980s, such as MPO Videotronics, who released several TV/VCR combo units that could be used as portable machines, but those were either targeted to corporations or high-end consumers. I'm wondering if there was any company that came out with a portable tape player in order to compete with the new-to-market portable DVD players at the time. VCRs ranged in a variety of different sizes over the format's 4-decade run, but even the later produced machines would still have to be exponentially larger than the biggest portable DVD player. Even with that fact in mind, several companies managed to release a portable cassette player. A company named Funai came out with the Fun TV portable VHS player, which has an interesting backpack-looking design. From the box, I gather that it's meant to be attached to the front seat of a vehicle so that the cool kids in the back seat of the vehicle can be watching some Pokemon on the way home from soccer practice. It's fitted with a 5-inch LCD display that's attached to a basic-looking VHS unit that seems to fit comfortably all inside the backpack. The device outputs in mono only, but it does have 2 different headphone ports, which would have probably worked fine as a moderately priced way to keep any backseat rider entertained. If you want to pick one up now, unless you happen to find one at a thrift store or garage sale, will probably run you anywhere from $80 to $200 online once you factor in shipping. But Funai wasn't the only company to make a portable VHS player. Audiovox produced at least 2 models of their own portable players. The first model was the VBP 1000S that rocked a 4-inch display that folds down and fits nicely into the carrying bag to keep the system compact during travel. This unit also rocks 2 different headphone ports as well as a composite in port so you could plug in a video game console or, I don't know, a DVD player. I also found a similar version of this model with Rampage branding, but I'm assuming the only difference is the adjustable tracking capability on the Rampage version was upgraded to auto tracking on the non-Rampage S model of the same unit. As besides those 2 differences, the units look identical. The second model they produced was the VBP 2000, which besides the lighter gray plastic used and the 5-inch instead of 4-inch display, this machine on the outside looks exactly the same as the VBP 1000S model. Similarly to the Fun TV portable player, any of the Audiovox options will also run you about $80 to $200 online. But one other company decided to make the weirdest yet most impressive portable VHS player of them all. RCA, the same company who released the first VHS cassette player in the States back in 1977, decided in 2001 that they also needed to throw their hat into the ring of portable VHS players with the BLV 552. This thing is massive. I don't have any other portable VHS players with me to compare it with, but it is about the same length as an average DVD and VHS combo player from the mid to late 2000s. The top part of the machine has two different light gray compartments. The bottom one, with the RCA logo imprinted into the middle, contains a little storage compartment to fit two different power cables. You access it by lifting up on either of its sides or on top if the front panel is open. Inside the compartment, there is a caution note asking its users to not place food or drink inside the compartment. The top compartment, however, is where all the magic happens, as lifting it shows a massive 5.6-inch LCD display and two different built-in stereo speakers. Below is the placement of some of the basic functions of the machine. The power, volume, and picture buttons are all in the top row, with the play, stop, rewind, and fast forward buttons sitting below them slightly raised up from the bottom of the compartment. Below the bottom compartment is a weird handle design meant to buckle the unit into a car. Each side of the unit has the same oval-shaped hole to feed a seatbelt through. What I assume is the back side of the unit reveals the rest of its features. Front and center lies where you would put a VHS right into the unit. Below that, we have two headphone ports on each side of the unit. We have a composite out on the left and composite in on the right. Then in the middle of the panel from left to right, we have an external panel port, the eject button, which also acts as a stop button, the DC power port for the car power supply, and an AC power port, or for a regular power supply. Also to note are these four plastic pegs that pop out so the unit can stand up when in travel and not really scratch the panel. Turning the unit over briefly shows that the unit was manufactured in October of 2001, as well as a few other details and warnings. My unit is not in perfect condition either. The top part of the screen has three different places where plastic has chipped off over the years, and there are slight scuffs and scratches all over the unit with several missing screws as well. Now, let's get to using this thing. First thing to note real quick, this is the only one of the portable players I've seen that you put the cassette in the opposite way the screen faces. If you're using the unit portably, this shouldn't matter, but this will become a bit of a hindrance later on. Powering on the unit will light up the buttons on the compartment below the screen, but not the eject button on the back panel. The screen will stay black until a tape is inserted into the machine. Once inserted, the screen turns blue and displays play until a signal is detected from the tape. Then the play message moves to the top left of the screen for a few seconds as the video starts to play.
Introducing 20th Century Fox Selections, an exciting new collection of hit films every season. Each available for a limited time only. All unbelievably priced under $10.
I must say, for a portable screen, the display looks pretty sharp, as much as a 5.5-inch screen displaying VHSs can be sharp. The speakers get very loud and distorted at full volume. But keeping the unit at around half volume is plenty loud enough. The picture button displays a similar layout to the volume control, and you can adjust the contrast, brightness, color, and tint of the display. Rewinding or fast-forwarding a tape will add 3 thick bars of static and discolor the image, but it is still clear enough to be able to scan through the tape being played. Stopping a tape will display the blue screen and the stop message in the middle, and hold it in the top left corner until another action is performed. Like the eject button, the stop button will also eject a tape if a tape is already stopped. Once headphones are plugged into either port of the unit, all the speakers will be muted until removed. Overall, I think this machine works quite well as a portable VHS player, but how well would it work as a stationary device? While most portable VHS players only include composite in, this one includes composite out, making it capable of being a stationary device very easily. Well, this is where things start to get a bit awkward. First off, with how the setup is in my room, I had to remove the plastic bottom panel if I wanted it to fit underneath my TV. So if your entertainment center is as thin as mine, be warned. Second, remember how all the buttons are underneath the screen compartment? This means if you want to access any of the functions of the machine besides eject, you'll have to lift the screen up since the machine doesn't have a remote. Also, make sure to turn the volume down completely or have headphones plugged into the unit so the internal speakers don't play audio. One last gripe I have with the whole setup is how the composite and power cables protrude out in front of the machine. This means you have to wrap the cables around the side of the machine in order to get anything plugged in. And trying to solve that problem by turning the machine around will only create a bigger problem, as good luck trying to insert a tape into the machine when the tape door's right next to the wall. But I guess that's what happens when you try to use a portable device in your stationary setup. Next, I wanted to push this machine to its limits and test out several devices using the unit's composite in port. The first thing I wanted to test out was a PlayStation 2. The console released 1 year before the portable device released, and it natively outputs in the same resolution as the screen inside the portable player. And finally, I'll be able to test out some DVDs on the machine as well. Freeze! Playing PS2 games on this device is a mostly pleasant experience. I couldn't notice any obvious input lag in the games I tested, and since PS2 outputs natively in either 480i or 480p, everything looks as crisp as PS2 games can get. However, screen text will sometimes display so small that you'll have to squint your eyes and move about 2 centimeters away from the screen just to get the chance to make out what it says. This also goes for any small sprites or details in general, but nothing to the point where a game would become impossible or difficult to play. More of a slight inconvenience if anything. For a portable experience though, it works perfectly fine. I could almost see myself doing this back in the day if I were to own a machine like this during vacations. Now, the other thing I wanted to test is how DVDs look on the machine. So with the PS2 already plugged in, I popped in a few DVDs I had laying around. I made sure to test out both an older and newer film as well as a film with subtitles. Besides a DVD of old Beatles footage that wasn't restored well, everything I played on the machine looks really sharp, and a significant jump up from any of the VHS tapes I watched on the machine. Even the subtitles on DVDs are large enough on the screen to be easily read from a good distance away. Now that I have tested a console around the time the machine was released, I wanted to test something much older. So the second console I decided to test was the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Released back in 1985, and with a much smaller 256 by 240 pixel output resolution, I was curious how well simpler looking games would display on the screen. After playing a level or two in a few different games, it was overall a pleasant experience. Visually, sprites on the screen only were difficult to see when they would start to flicker, but that's just an issue with many games on the original Nintendo and its minuscule amount of memory. Not to mention all the chiptune music sounds great coming from the little internal speakers of the machine. Overall, it's quite a fun experience playing older games on the machine. Okay, so for this next test, I wanted to plug in another VHS player into the machine. It was at this point of my recording process that the internal tape mechanism of the portable player stopped working properly. VHS tapes that would look fine playing in one tape player would have a lot of noise or tracking issues being played on the portable machine. So before I take my machine apart, I wanted to test if the composite in and out ports would work simultaneously. Almost all VCRs have the capability to pass audio and video through the machine for recording or displaying purposes, but this player was built to be a portable device, and every other portable machine from the time only had composite in, so I have no idea if the RCA machine is capable of it. After skimming through the PDF of the manual for the BLV 552, it mentions absolutely nothing about both functions working simultaneously, and thankfully for me, it does. So this meant I would insert a VHS tape into the VHS DVD combo player. I plugged it into the lovely RCA machine, displaying the tape on the player's internal screen. Then I have it outputting to a composite switch box that's plugged into a composite to HDMI converter, that's then plugged into a powered dual HDMI splitter, with one of the HDMI cables plugged directly into my TV, and the other plugged into a capture card that is then plugged into my computer, displaying over OBS. And somehow through all of that mess, I'm able to watch my VHS copy of Highlander on 3 different screens at once. Also, please don't be an idiot like me and buy a cheap, non-powered HDMI splitter thinking it'll work to display your pictures in 2 places. It won't. Before I try to fix what's wrong with the internal tape mechanism of the portable player, I have one more idea for pushing the device to its limits. Each one of these tests so far has only had me inputting composite signals into the portable tape player, so I wanted to test if it was possible to display something that natively outputs from HDMI into the machine. In trying to buy an additional composite to HDMI converter a while ago, I accidentally purchased HDMI to composite converters instead because they look the exact same to me at 3 in the morning. Because of this, I wanted to see if a more modern game console would display onto the machine's screen, so I tested out my PS4 to play a few games and check how Blu-rays would look on the machine's internal screen. And oh boy does it display on the screen alright. Where do I start besides wishing anyone good luck in trying to read text being displayed that is natively supposed to be seen in 1080p on a 5.5-inch 480i display? Now, when it comes to playing games, I would say everything has been playable, but trying to focus on any small object or even knowing where I was going half the time was a challenge. You would really have to know whatever game you're playing like the back of your hand if you're going to attempt to beat a game on this machine. Also, when it comes to watching Blu-rays on the internal screen, well, honestly, I did not see any real improvement over the same movies being played back on DVD. Blu-rays obviously look much more clear than any of the VHS tapes I've tested, which isn't a surprise at all. But if I can't tell the difference between a DVD and a Blu-ray being displayed on the same screen, then I guess I've reached the limitations of this device. That being said, during this whole process, the actual tape player mechanism inside the machine has been shoddy to say the least. The tape head would often get dirty and cause the picture of the machine to get all distorted and noisy. Moving my player around slightly reveals the noise of a lot of rattling of broken bits of plastic scurrying around the machine. So after opening up the machine to dump all the pieces out and clean the tape head, the tape playback worked perfectly. So I would put the machine back together and put it in my room, and it would stop working properly. And even after cleaning it, we're still getting all of this.
Dress uniforms, spit and polish. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stand this.
Lovely.
Feel like my...
For several nights in a row, I would take it out of my room to clean and carefully slide it back into its designated spot, and suddenly it would stop working. I was really starting to think that there was some bad juju or something in my room. When on the final night I decided to clean the machine, I tested it outside my room and noticed, wait a minute, it was working perfectly and I haven't even taken it apart yet. Okay. So tape player, not in its designated spot. All plugged in. Clean picture. The closer I move it to here, picture fucks up. Slowly slide it onto the thing, and wow. Move it back to the bed. Clean picture again. I don't know why this wasn't happening the entire time I had the machine in my room in this exact spot, but I do know that the tape head had a decent amount of dust that I had to clean off, and that I know it was affecting the picture outside of this spot in my room at some point in time. All I really know is that I'm no longer going to be keeping the player in this spot. Now that I have done almost everything possible with this machine, I can only think of one thing left to do.
I wanna take you for a ride. 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 That's right. I declare to the Pokemon of the world, I will be the greatest Pokemon trainer, the greatest Pokemon master of all time.
As his adventures began, Ash, our hero from Palette, chose Pikachu, a Pokemon who won.
Being able to use this machine for its real purpose for once, watching Pokemon in the backseat of my own car as some maniac drives, was some of the most fun I had testing this machine out. This machine is meant for entertaining the residents of the backseat of vehicles during long nights of driving. However, while being a very capable and fun machine, it was never going to beat out a portable DVD player for most people. DVDs are a much smaller media, and you could store dozens of loose discs in the same amount of room of storing only 1 or 2 VHS tapes. Not to mention, but of course portable DVD players have always been much more compact, portable, and cheaper for the average consumer back in the day, and even now. While it has its flaws and odd quirks, the BLV 552 is a really fun portable VCR with plenty of features and a nice screen for the time. It's hard to recommend this as a tape player now, as there are many better and cheaper machines out there for capturing footage or even just watching some old movies. And I'm assuming I'm one of the few people who would still want to watch a VHS on the go anyways. But I can say that this is one of the most fun oddities of the late VHS era and is one fun machine to boot.